Hello, the purpose of this presentation is for vice principals and principals, the leadership team, basically to provide feedback on the draft professional appraisal system for the rest of this school year, second semester. So the first area that was presented to staff today is the area of the standards learning module that they're going to do for the teacher continuum. There's a required asynchronous module for topic 3, which is standards, and then they will have an optional module which will review topic 1 and 2, which is classroom systems and culture. Middle school and high school did a session at the beginning of the year. Early years and elementary did not because they were doing responsive classroom. And then they will take a self-assessment through a Google form in order to identify where they are in each area of the teacher continuum. The question that we have is, should they identify one area per topic, or should they identify one goal per topic? So it would be 3 goals, 1 goal, 2 goal, seeing as they're going to be reflecting on 3 topics: standards, classroom systems, and classrooms cultures. So we're going to gather feedback to see what we think about as a team. This has already been communicated that this is due on February 19th. If they do not complete this, and by February 19th, they will attend a required synchronous session offered after school by Britta and myself. The next module that we'll be going into is assessment. For assessment, they're going to be completing the same, about a 30-minute asynchronous module related to assessment, and they're going to use the continuum to self-assess themselves. And again, create a goal aligned to this area. This will happen between February 22nd and March 26th, and if they do not complete it by March 26th, they will be required to attend a synchronous session after school between 3:30 and 4:30. The question here would be, should we also have them set a goal related to assessment? So ultimately, there would be 4 topics that we would be completing this year, and should they do a goal for each topic or only 1 goal total? The next area that we need to talk around is classroom visits. I know that first semester, many of us, myself included, had very little time to be in classrooms. And so our question is, are we going to be committing to that for second semester? So that would be principals, vice principals, myself as the director of learning, and the assistant director of learning, which are Matt and Britta. So I put there, we will ensure that they'll have at least 1 classroom visit. You're going to now provide feedback to say, do you think they should have 0 visits, 1 visit? Should we commit to 2 visits? How many visits should we commit to for staff? And then the last area that we've done in the past is student surveys. So this is again up for discussion. Should we do a student survey so students, or in the case in early years, parents can provide feedback to staff around the learning experience? So the first answer would be yes or no. Do you believe we should do that? And then why? Is that what you're saying? If you say yes, we're going to go into the next section where we'll discuss how we should use that data with each other. So related to classroom observations, there will be a question of, again, when we are visiting classrooms, how are we going to collect data? Last year, middle school was using this format. This format has also been presented to the board as a potential indicator that we can use for a school-wide indicator related to professional performance, and then aligning it to our professional learning program so that we know regarding the teacher continuum, where are people in their self-assessment versus their observed by their evaluator or supervisor. So you would see this would normally have the teacher's name. What topic are you looking at? This is their grades in their grade book. This is not something that we have to have for all sections. The blue is their self-evaluation, and the red is when they were observed by their different evaluators, what the average is. And this blue here is their goal, so you know what their goal is when you're going into their classroom. Here you will see this is the date they were visited, who visited them, and what was the comments that were automatically emailed to the teacher. And then we can also see down here how many times they've been visited throughout the year and by whom. This is the only area where you would see coaches' names appear. You wouldn't see this type of information about comments from coaches because those are considered confidential. The only people who would have access to this are principals, vice principals, and the teacher. And then I have a question of, should the superintendent Trisha, myself as the Director of Learning, and the Assistant Directors of Learning also have access to this data. So that is one. The first question is, should we use this format or a format similar to this to be collecting data on teachers? And two, who should have access to this data? So the next area is, how are we going to be providing feedback to staff this year? And is that going to be through an informal or a formal meeting? Will we be having a formal meeting with each staff member or each staff member who is on cycle this year, or are we not doing that at all? And if we are doing that, then we're gonna, also provide feedback of what will happen during those meetings. And the last one is peer observations. It says 2 peer observations per semester is what we used to do, and there's a protocol to follow to do that. So my question for us to consider is, will we be doing peer observations as a requirement this school year? And then the last is, we need to change the teacher continuum. In the past, the survey that people have taken had the descriptor, and then they would choose which one it was, so they could read what the descriptor was. Unfortunately, by setting it up this way, it compromises the sustainability of using the same survey from year to year, and will not allow us to correlate for different staff members if we make changes and adjustments to the wording in the survey, which we have done every single year. So my proposal is that instead of putting what the descriptor is, we just put either box 1, so we could say box 1, box 2, box 3, box 4, where are they assessing themselves? And then option 2 would be to go back to the words that we originally used on this rubric, when it was a rubric, which was pre-Spark, Spark, generative, and internalize. And then my next question is, what other ideas do you have about what we might put as the descriptors for the 4 different areas that are on the teacher continuum for people to self-assess where they're at? So this is also a question, who should have access? This is who I've put should have access to the self-assessment and observational data. You means the teacher, because this is a presentation that we would eventually use for them, but I can change that to teacher. And then who would have access to the goals? I'm proposing that the instructional and literacy coaches do have access to the goals that teachers have so that they can support them. So again, please, through the Ed Puzzle, you've provided your feedback. I will now correlate that feedback, and then we will have discussions moving forward in order to make decisions to present to staff. Thank you very much for your time.